Christopher Thomas Grant. How are you doing? You doing good?
I'm doing really well.
Great. I thought we'd do something different for this overview. Thought we might just do a painting instead of a game. I'm just kidding. It's a game. It's just so GD pretty that you might think it's a painting with the untrained eye.
You know what the giveaway for me was?
What's that?
The animation. It was moving.
Oh yeah, and the A, B, and X, Y button, which is also a pretty good indication.
Well, it depends on your paintings.
This here pretty game is Transistor. It's the new jam from Supergiant. You may remember them from Bastion, which looks a lot like this game, except for, whoa, what's this? Turn-based combat, kind of. I mean, it's not really turn-based, I suppose, but you do take a turn. It's called turn.
What you're saying is Bastion, action game, right? You gotta hit them buttons fast.
Mashing game, because there's a lot of button mashing in that.
And then Transistor slows it down a bit.
Slows it down. Much more strategic experience. Now I have a dog. It's a cyber dog. No big deal. It's Bastion with cyber dogs. So, I mean, I didn't think Bastion was broken before, but they did fix it. This is gonna be a tricky one to describe because this turn system is bananas. I guess before we get into that, let's just address like the obvious, and that it is super stylish. It is a real good looking game. Lots of VFX going on. I don't know if you could see that last enemy that I just dispatched was a paparazzi enemy that when it attacks you, little photographs of yourself appear on the screen, which is pretty sweet. You play as a singer named Red in a city called Cloudbank, which I think is a computer. It's not. It is very computer-like, and everything is robots and stuff. So, like, I mean, it's called Cloudbank, so that sort of intimates a computerish nature.
It has that same kind of placeless sense that Bastion had, you know, where you're in a bar, and it's like, really, it just looks like a weird empty room with, like, these creepy characters in it. And so it was, like, narratively placed in something that approximates the real world, paparazzi, etc. But then none of it looks like that.
Sure. There's more than just the name of the city. Like, all of you see, whenever I use these attacks, they're named after, like, functions with the parentheses after it, which is a really cool effect. So let me, I guess, explain what's going on. You have these different abilities. You can map 4 to the face buttons, as I've done, and then you can use them to dispatch enemies. Each enemy drops a cell that you can see, which you have to pick up, or else the enemy will respawn. So it's not enough to kill it. You have to pick it up. You can assign those abilities to those face buttons at will. You unlock a new one every time you level up, which I'm doing now. And then not only do you have the 4 that you can map, you can take your other abilities that you don't have mapped and attach them to the abilities you have assigned to augment them. It's a crazy system, and I'll explain it a little bit deeper once I get to the point where I can start assigning them. These are limiters, which were also present in Bastion in a different way that make the game more difficult, and you get a boost for using them. So that is like 1-to-1 straight up, fully from Bastion. And it adds another sort of strategic layer to the game. For instance, I'm using one now where the cells that each enemy drops are protected by a shield. So you have to hit them at least once before you can pick them up. And for doing so, you get extra experience points at the end of the fight. I don't know. I really liked that system in Bastion. I'm surprised that more companies haven't like copied that, because I thought it was so cool, like to make the game harder to get better rewards. And that is very much present here as well. So for instance, the dog that I can summon, that is one of my special abilities that I have assigned. And you can see underneath, I don't know if you can see this actually, because the video quality through this Skype window might not be good enough. I have assigned this explosive power that makes his bark attacks like have a huge area of effect. So there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of rig out your character.
So is weed 2.0? Is that's not drugs, is it?
No, it's not. Is that all you think about, honestly?
Look, if it's the future, I want to know what we've done to improve weed. Have we gone to the next stage?
It's clearly been outlawed. This is cool. There are little terminals where you can learn sort of more about the city that you're in. When you start the game out, you're given nothing. You don't know who you are, where you're at, what's going on, why you have this giant greatsword. And you sort of have to unlock that stuff by looking at lore at those terminals. So this is the power assignment screen. You can see I've got some abilities here. So you have to make the choice of like which abilities do you actually want to use. That breach ability is really handy. It shoots through walls and it's a nice long distance attack. Mask lets me turn invisible. So you have to think about like which ones do I want to be able to use, and which ones have really good sort of passive effects that I can attach to other abilities. So, for instance, I'm going to put that bounce power in my B button, and now I can use that. And if I want, I can, put another power I wasn't using and attach it to bounce to make it a little bit better. So this spark ability shoots out a bunch of different little projectiles whenever I use it in a main action button, or I can attach it to my crash power, and then all of a sudden my melee attack, like my basic melee attack, shoots out a wave of 3 attacks, like so. That is a little bit shorter, but it can do a lot more damage if you get right up on a fool. So you have all these abilities. This is the limiter screen. You can see I just unlocked one that makes enemies twice as strong, and it gives me another experience point boost if I use it in tandem with other ones.
So here's a question I have.
Yeah.
Consider me. I'm a small child.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. This seems very complicated to me.
It's very complicated.
How does the game do with regards to kind of like easing you into this process?
It doesn't. It doesn't at all. Because I'm going to kick it up to notches unknown. Each power is a person, a human being that lived in this city and was, I guess, de-resed somehow, and then became these different functions. And by using these different functions in different ways, either as passive abilities or active abilities or attachment abilities, you can learn more about the character and how they got to the sorry state that they're in as they become cubes. So you're not even told you're unlocking these new powers. You're like, oh, you found a body. Now you found bounce. What does that mean? I don't really know.
Normally I would say that sounds complicated. I don't know if I like that, but as somebody who's been neck deep in Dark Souls 2 for the last couple weeks,
that sounds refreshingly accessible.
Sounds really.
You're given a lot of opportunities to experiment with the system, so it really isn't. It's not beyond comprehension. It is not as accessible as Bastion was, which was basically like, here are different weapons. One is attached to X, one is attached to A. Have fun. But I actually think I like it a lot more, especially once you start adding in this turn system. So in turn system, in turn mode, you can see I have a meter at the top of the screen that I use up whenever I use an ability or move. So you have a little bit of time. That was not a great turn that I just took because I missed a couple times. You also have a recharge ability after you use up the entire meter. Or not an ability, you have to wait until you can start using your other actions again. So you got to think, when do I want to use the turn system? When do I want to, just wail on an enemy? The turn system freezes time, so it gives you time to avoid an attack and set up combos and do all kinds of great stuff. But it will leave you pretty vulnerable after you do it.
So you got to make it count.
I'm going to hop into a turn there right when I was about to die. So I'm using some attacks, setting those up, trying to take out that one process, but I can't do it. I goofed. And now I can't attack, which sucks because I can't break that shield. I can't kill the enemy that's attacking me. You have to be pretty judicious with your turn usage, but it does let you set up some pretty great combos. For instance, that crash ability, like my main combat ability, makes my other abilities stronger if I use them in the same turn. There really are
system.
Yeah, there's also like a backstab system. If you can get behind an enemy, it'll do bonus damage. If you use the stealth ability and then attack, you'll get a little bit stronger. Here I'm about to die, which is not ideal.
Good times. How far in the game are we here?
Not very far at all. It was like the second level, but I have some
we're
pretty
early on, and you're already rocking combos and different things.
I got those super bad limiters going, which is why I just got murked. Every enemy is doing double damage, so you can make the game as hard as you want it to be. That's my sword yelling. The sword is called the Transistor, and you don't really know.
It's like the name of the game.
Yeah, you don't really know why there's a voice inside your sword. You don't really know your relationship to them when you start out. All that stuff is sort of unlocked.
Does the Bastion guy narrate the game again?
No, but I mean, you do have this constant narrator. It is the Transistor is talking to you the entire time, and it is, no surprise, a gravelly voiced man who's like occasionally cracking wise at some shit. Like,
hey, sword, I don't need this.
I do need it. I do kind of need every game to have that in it from now on. I should point out
why her name is Red.
Because I guess her hair.
Yeah.
I should point out, when I died, it's a really great mechanic. Whenever you die, you lose access to one of your functions until you get to a little bit further in the game. This is a nice segment where I'm about to get murked. Unless I dash out of the way really quick.
Is murked, is that new kid slang for getting killed?
You're 68 years old, you know that?
Not yet. I'm no Social Security. I got a couple more years.
You're looking forward to it though, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
It's gonna be pretty. I mean, there's no way that there will be any left by the time you reach that point. But
I know.
Terrible. It's this is me just sort of looking at the city. It's a goddamn gorgeous game, Chris. Like, it's hitting all the same notes for me that Bastion hit. And I think it's actually a different visual style. Like, I think the big thing for Bastion was sort of the piecemeal nature of the world, like watching all the pieces come up and fly up at you and know, put together these really intricate environments. This one, it just seems like they took the limiters off and just like went bananas with it.
Bastion definitely felt more modular, if you will, right? Like these different kind of floating elements, and it was very Spartan, right? Very spare, and this feels much more fleshed out.
They really went to town on this one. Can I mention I'm in the back door, which is a secret area where you can kick a ball around a whole bunch for no purpose. You can chill in a hammock and look at what is, I'm sure, about to be the desktop background of many a gaming enthusiast.
I'm screen grabbing
cap. I'll shoot you my own screen cap that I took a little while ago.
Interestingly, these are my plans when I get my Social Security coming in. I'm just gonna hang out here on my hammock, my virtual hammock, and my digiball.
That technology will probably be available at that
point.
I
hope so.
You can hang out with your dog. This is like the central hub. This is the cooldown tent for when things get a little bit too real. Some of my little dog playing with the ball. So like, I'm down with that.
So I think one of the most interesting things about Bastion was that they ended up putting the game everywhere, and they built a game that from a control and input standpoint, even though it was like a twitchy button masher, like it actually worked pretty well on iOS. They ported it to everything.
Yeah,
and I think is being turn-based. Like it seems like it would work even better.
I mean, it's not inherently turn-based, right? You can play it in real-time action mode. But
for the kids.
The turn system is a fully, it's a viable option, and it's one that you'll have to use pretty frequently. But it is not, I would not call it like a slow, plotting strategic experience. Like, it is very fast-paced, especially, so this is one of the challenges that's available in the central hub area that sort of test your different skills. This and much like the special challenge areas in Bastion, they test your knowledge of the game's different functions and different unlockable abilities. So for instance, this one you can't beat unless you figure out how to use the charm ability that turns enemies against one another. And then once you do, it's kind of a cakewalk. There are other ones that test how efficiently you can use the turn system. So they might say, beat this area in a single turn by killing every enemy, in this frozen time phase. So again, like another sort of remnant of Bastion that is really sort of clever game design, teaching you the ropes without making you read a bunch of hot tips or whatever.
I don't want to sound too much like an old, but I look at this UI and I just think, wow, that looks really hard.
I'm not gonna lie, like it is, and it sort of just throws you into it. I mean, there is obviously a tutorial stage close to the beginning of the game, but really you just got to sort of play around with it, and then you'll start to understand how all these systems work together. But as you can see, like now that I have charmed basically everything on the screen, like I just have to sort of run around, and I'm gonna be just fine here.
So like Bastion, it's really level driven, right? Like there's not a lot of, maybe not a lot of choice. You're just sort of, defeating enemies, going through the level. It's not a puzzle game. It's not an RPG.
I'm a couple hours into it now, and it is fairly linear. In terms of like, you'll go to a section of the city, you can explore that section of the city, but it's mostly just like a succession of chambers. And then there's a final boss fight at the end of it. You could see after you beat like an area of enemies, you get a little screen saying like, area cleared. So like, yeah, it does have that idea of linearity to it. But I think it works really well because you never really know when one of those combat encounters is going to pop up. So much of the game is just exploring and learning what this city is, and going to those different terminals and like voting on what you want the weather to be tomorrow. Like all of this really weird, mysterious stuff that sort of expands the nature of the world, and then all of a sudden enemies jump out of the ground that you couldn't see before. So I don't really think that's a knock against it per se. I don't know. I think I like it a lot more than Bastion because of the turn system. I think it's ingenious because as much as I loved Bastion, like I admit that some of the time it kind of felt, once you found like the combination of melee and ranged weapon that you liked, it got a bit mindless at times. Like especially in the longer levels where you're just like churning through groups of guys. Like it just, you knew which buttons to press and you pressed them. And then you got through it. And this game requires you to think outside the box a little bit more. I
will say, one of the unique things about Bastion for me, it's one of the few games in recent memory that I finished and I immediately started up a new game. I played for like another 2 hours. I never finished that second playthrough, but like the idea that I finished the game and like wanted to play more of it was very unique.
So this is one of the challenges I alluded to earlier, and it's a really good example of like what this game's capable of, in that you have one turn to kill this square of enemies. You have this power, Breach, that can shoot through stuff, and you have to figure out how to get to where you need to get to hit all 4 of them without using more than one turn. It's really, really super clever. It's almost like it almost turns this combat and strategy and role-playing game mechanic into a puzzle mechanic. Like it's touching a lot of different sort of ideas, and I dig it. And I like unlocking music. The music in the game is also phenomenal. A lot of it is driven by a lead female vocalist who I think in the fiction of the game is supposed to be Red, this singer that you're playing as.
She's like a nightclub singer.
There's a button you can press at any time because Red has lost her voice. There's a button you can press at any time to make her hum along with the music that's playing in the background of the level that you're in.
That's adorable.
It's amazing. It's like it has no function whatsoever except to be slick as shit. It's like so much of the game is just designed to be really cool. And I just appreciate how there's another button that is called Flourish, and all it is, you've seen me do it a few times in this video, is you throw your sword into the air in front of you and then jump up to catch it. Again, no strategic purpose for that button whatsoever. It's just a cool thing you can do whenever you want.
I love that we have enough buttons on controllers now that you could basically put in a badass button.
Yeah.
And like that's all,
as if they programmed the game and they're like, oh god, we have 2 buttons that we didn't do anything with. Well, let's make one hum.
Yeah, it's I think, and that actually sounds similar to Bastion, where the input complexity was actually pretty simple, right? You have range, you have melee, but the complexity was in the systems underneath it. And it seems like this is the same. Like a lot of the complexity that I'm seeing isn't mechanical complexity, but it's like a systems complexity, right?
Right, and I think that Bastion would have been better served by having a little bit more of that. I would be curious to see, because as you can tell, I use the turn function a lot, basically whenever it is available to me. It's probably not even a smart idea to do that, because in this situation, I'm facing down 2 enemies. I could have just probably taken them out manually, dodged their attacks, attacked when they were vulnerable, etc. Because after using this turn, you can see I have like 5 seconds that I can't do anything. I just have to run around and dodge. So I'm curious to see if you could play through the game primarily as sort of a more actiony beat-em-up type experience, which I guess is good if you're the type of person that wants to play a game like that. I really am not. I generally prefer this idea of a slower paced thing that this game has going for it. I also love the idea of like outfitting yourself in all these different ways, because I've been playing for a couple hours now, and every time I get to one of those stations where I can change up my loadout, I generally do it because there's so many different ways you can change every power based on how many powers there are in the game, which I don't think I've come close to discovering all of them. The idea that all of them can be combined with every other one to create like a discrete power-up is like, I don't know, from a role-playing game enthusiast perspective, that's intoxicating to me.
And just to be clear, your weapon is always your sword, right? It's always transistor.
It is. I mean, it is always transistor. You don't find other weapons. You find these different functions. But I mean, not all your attacks are melee attacks. You have, like I used before, that spark attack. I have the bouncy ball attack. I have my dog summon. Here I can attach the stealth ability to the dog, and I guess make the dog stealthy, make it an invisible dog, which could be pretty terrifying under the right circumstances.
Can you put lasers on your dog?
Probably. I don't know. If I put that breach laser ability on the dog, maybe the dog can shoot lasers. I haven't tried that combo yet, but I will as soon as I'm done recording this video with you. It is.
That's intoxicating.
I like this game is so on the periphery to me, and I think it's just because it doesn't, like you said, like it does look really uninvitingly complex. I really think that the learning curve on the game is a lot shallower than it seems at first blush. And once you're playing it and messing with all these different systems, it's a really compelling idea. Also, all this shit is just like super cool. I want to know it's really hard for a game to get me as into the lore and like the mystery as this game has done in a relatively short amount of time.
Coming from Dark Souls, I think as complicated as it looks, you're not dying every 3 minutes, which is sort of how I play Dark Souls personally, just me. So
you mean to die every time that you die? It was on purpose.
I mean it's part of my. It's like a performance art, really.
Sure.
It's part of my performance, and but it seems like I wouldn't need to do that as an option, since of course it's optional for me.
Yeah. Well, everything's optional. Like this game's idea of modular difficulty is so ingenious. The idea of putting these limiters on to make the game as difficult as you can possibly take it. You can see earlier when I was at one of those stations, I took off the limiter that gave every one of those little cells that popped out a shield because it was so annoying. And I used this turn function so much that, lets me not take any actions after I finish my turn, and it made it really hard to pick up those cells before they respawned into new enemies. So like that one thing was making the game a little bit more difficult than I wanted it to be. So
it's also an interesting tweak on like the idea of normal and hard difficulties.
Yeah. No, there is no. I don't remember. I don't think there's like a difficulty setting. It's all in those limiters. I don't know. I'm just really enthusiastic about this game. Like from a visual design, perspective, it is obviously unlike anything else other than Bastion. It's unlike no other developer is touching what Supergiant is doing. But from a game design perspective, like there's so many different great ideas from so many different genres. Like it's really hard not to be super enthusiastic about it. So that's Transistor.
When can I play it? Is what I want to know.
Well, this video will be going up on Tuesday, so this week. Congratulations.
Wow,
congratulations,
I did it.
Time Traveler. I'm very proud of you. You will want to play this game. I think very much like Bastion, it is going to be a game that a lot of people are going to be talking about for a super long time. And like you mentioned earlier, like I would not be surprised if this ended up on every platform under the sun, because I think that it is. I think that it's kind of tailored for that.
I just got to get some Weed 2.0.
Gotta get some Weed 2.0. Curl up on the couch.
Set aside some time
with
my cyber dog.
With a good tube of drugs. I don't know. I don't know what we're doing. We're just wasting time. People are done with this video. I'm done with it. You're done with it. Thank you for watching. Terminated the shit out of that process.
Process terminated.
Don't even pretend like I didn't. We'll see y'all later this week with more vids. Wolfenstein out this week. That one's gonna be worth catching. I don't know. I haven't played it yet. So we'll see y'all soon.